Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and today I'm kind of back to business as usual in that ranks out of the way, I've got a flow of games going finally and actually starting to get a bit of a build-up of replays to use, and I'm just praying that when the patch comes out this Thursday with the with the British cruisers and the first British line, that some of these replays still work, and I'm really going to try to cram them in tomorrow and at least get them recorded so that I don't lose a couple of these games. But today I'm driving the Tier 4 American destroyer, the Clemson, and I absolutely love this thing. It's one of my favorite ships to just go drive because it doesn't really matter. If you go out, you have a bad game, you still probably manage to do like 20,000 damage, and I just love her as a ship. Great gunfire, good torpedoes, 6 tubes either side. I know I've featured this more than once. I've featured other people's games, and for me the Clemson's just, along with I'd say the Königsberg and a couple Tier 6 ships, just the ships I get into when I just want to relax, have fun, enjoy the game, not take it too seriously, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. I had a bunch of high tier games and I just needed to change it up, so I hopped into the Clemson. And right away, run into the enemy's DD, and I don't know what they're doing here. The Clemson is a great gunship. Sure, she has torpedoes, but what's the point? Like, look how much damage I've already done to that enemy Clemson. Taking her down to half health, and they haven't fired at me once. And clearly, with the way they're waving, you can see they're trying to get torpedoes in the water. And I don't know the purpose, because with only 5.5 kilometer torps, I'm not particularly close into that range, and I'll easily be able to open up outside of it once I finish them off. And there's the first set of torps. You can see I'm already driving away, and I loop to the left now that I've opened the distance to just get across any other incoming torpedoes. And there they are. No surprise. You saw the way the ship maneuvered. You know torps are in the water. Now, from here, I kind of expect to see some ships. You know, you're really expecting at least a couple enemy ships to spawn. You know, we've had probably 4 spawn down in the south, so I'd expect 4 up in there north. And so far, it's just been the Clemson. So I think the enemy team right off the spawn just all ran to the south and have all grouped up right at their cap. And I know this is kind of a common strategy on this map, but I don't think it's the best one, because the problem is when you do that, you know, often one ship won't do the same thing as your team. They'll go charging into the enemy because they're in a ship, you know, let's get into the fight. And they end up dying just like that Clemson, and they can't do much. So I really would prefer that teams actually kind of stick out in that backfield. You don't have to push in, you know, but stay there, distract the team, try to keep the enemy team divided. Because what you're going to see now is my team, because the north is clear, are going to close in on the southern contingent of this enemy team from all directions. And it's going to be a little much for that enemy team to really deal with. So let's just jump ahead 30-40 seconds to when I get into engagement range, because I'm just driving open ocean right now. So here we are, finally closed. Got my smoke up because that's what DD do, well, gunboat DDs do, and you know, at higher tiers I would probably be smoking friendlies, but a low tier like this I really want to put my guns to use. And there's so many friendly ships around here that I know the enemy is going to remain spotted, so I'm going to keep firing at some of those enemy targets. So right now I've chosen originally the Königsberg, but I'm going to switch targets to this Nassau. I put the torps in the water not because they're in range, but just in case that Nassau were to suddenly turn right and start charging up that strait. I've seen ships do it. I don't know why you'd charge a smoke screen, but I have seen it. They seem to be a little bit smarter than that. They're keeping their distance. But that's not stopping me from putting my guns to really good use. You can see, got a volley in, got the fire, and I'm just going to stay in my smoke here and keep trying to do consistent damage to this Nassau as long as I can. And I'm kind of getting to the edge of my engagement with her just because of those rocks. So now I've got to pick something to shoot at, and with this enemy Chester charging me, they've become my next target. You can see I'm not hanging out in the screen anymore. I know it's going to dissipate soon. I'd rather have momentum. And you know what, I've got a lot of friendly ships with me, so if I call out that target, which I did do, I'm going to get the support to erase this ship. But at the same time, I'm not going charging in yet. I'm keeping my range. I've put a battleship, a couple cruisers between me and that Chester, and you can see how I'm kind of just left alone. I've talked about it, I know I talked about it yesterday, about kind of DDs having to be a priority target, and you do need to do that just because a DD can do a lot of damage. I arc the shells over the island, finish the Chester off, and now it's time for me to get aggressive. I see that entire group of battleships down there, and I want to put torps into things, because as much as, you know, I've done some decent damage with the guns, that's not how you get big damage in a destroyer. You've got to put your torps to use to really start getting up there, at least in these lower tiers. Like, I could light fires, stay at distance, but I'm kind of sacrificing friendlies to be able to do that. I'm letting them take the beating. So now's my turn to share in, taking the beat down, and all I do is ask my team to concentrate fire on that Bogatyr. It's really the only ship in that group that I'm really afraid of, and it's just because the Bogatyr has a very solid rate of fire, and if it focused on me, could probably do some damage pretty quick. Luckily, my friendly Kaiser, renamed user, who must have had some sort of offensive nickname in the game to end up with a name like that, finishes them off, and it's time for me to charge a battleship. This Kaiser Maverick 40 was unfortunate enough to decide to separate from the other two battleships, which makes him an easy target. And when you're driving destroyers, at all times, that's what you need to be looking for. Look for a ship that's kind of separated from the pack, because it's not going to have the same kind of support. Had I gone for those two in the south right now, I can guarantee you that a pair of them would have focused me down. Whereas with just the one, it's not really happening, you know? Sure, he's got a friendly at 7k, but battleship guns, 7k, sometimes aren't quite as accurate as you'd like, and he just drove straight into that entire first wall of torps, which essentially doubled my damage. So next on my list is going to be Raffle Tank for the win. Well, at least that was the plan. You can see I even start picking on them, and I activate my smoke here, basically hoping to sit in a smoke cloud close to some enemy ships, firing my guns. And I was getting ready to put torps in. It's kind of a shame my ally rammed him there, but I can understand why. And the ram's not always a bad play, especially when you're ahead. It just eliminates a ship off the enemy team. But the battleships have got some support in the form of a Phoenix. Tier 4 American cruiser, really a destroyer wannabe. It's got torpedoes, it's got good guns actually. And you can see I switched to AP here, hoping for a couple bigger hits. And after a couple volleys of not really connecting with much, I switch back to HE, because I'd rather kind of a consistent damage that I can predict than maybe I'll get it 2,000, maybe not. And I get a really solid connection there, 1,200 out of the first volley, second volley's going in, another 1,400, and the fire ends up killing him. So now I've got another decision to make. What ship do I go for? I've got a Wyoming ahead of me, 6.3 kilometers, and that German BB behind me, and I decide to go for the Wyoming. Mostly because he's right ahead. So I should, any second here, activate my speed boost, because you want to remain in that kind of kill zone as short as possible. And I'm gonna get the first set of torps off and then turn in because I've still got all those torpedoes on the other side. I was fortunate to get one fire, which means if my torps don't kill him but get a flood, that's gonna stick. And that's really why I kind of play the way I do. And the second you're in detection range, you might as well be firing your guns anyway. It's kind of silly not to, and I find Japanese destroyer captains do it a little more than Americans just because they focus on their torpedoes more, but the guns are still very effective. I get 2 torps in there, wind up getting my Confederate, and hopefully I am the one who finishes them off, but St. Louis gets them with a volley of HE it looks like, and leaves 2 targets left. This Kaiser's the closest thing to me, so I'm gonna assault him next. I've got 7 seconds on that first set of torps and then about 20 on the next set. So you can see how I'm focusing on using this piece of land to guard me the best I can. I put those torps in the water kind of assuming he's going to keep backing up, and I want to herd him forward. That's what I'm doing there. If I put them behind him, he's either going to back up into them and eat a whole bunch of torpedoes, or he's going to come forward, I'll have my second set of tubes waiting for him, and I'll end up killing him. I got a little lucky there that I didn't get killed. That was a very solid volley on his part, but the torps are looking good. The first set that I aimed right at his marker connects all 3. Solid 20,000 damage, but you can see he did slow up. I tuck myself right into the nook of this island, and now it's kind of a waiting game. I can see that he's going forward, so I start to back up. You can watch that gray leader and how it's drawing left, and that's because A, he's moving, but also he's still accelerating. And I'm going to aim 1 or 2 a little bit short, and the reason I'm doing that is I expect him to turn in a bit. It's a long ship at this kind of range, you're going to hit even if he aims short, but had he turned in or slowed up trying to dodge those, I still would have had a solid connection. So that's my game. 1 enemy BB on the other team, and my guys quickly finish him off. And that's just the type of game you can have in the Clemson. 241,000 credits, 3,100 experience, First Blood, Confederate, High Caliber, Devastating Strike, 131,000 damage over guns and torps, and a bunch of kills. It's one of the main reasons I love the Clemson. The other being that I took home 211,000 credits after all my expenses, and, you know, I drive this ship a bunch because it makes money to pay for the fleet. I find I can't make as much at the higher tiers. At tier 4, 5, 6, you just tend to take home a really healthy sum of credits. A reminder to everyone that I've got my 250 subscriber giveaway going. Check out the video from 2 days ago on how to enter that. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving me a thumbs up or subscribing. Both really help me up. I'm up to like 291 now. How quickly I climbed from that 250 announcement on Sunday. Anyways, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you guys tomorrow.